love doing that. Welcome everybody, and welcome to the public as well. We start the meeting with minutes of the previous meeting. Our silence is correct. Is that correct? Yeah, yes. Agreed. Correct. Agreed. Absence of amendments.
Apologies from Mr. Richard Powell and from Councillor Alex Broken, but Councillor Adelaide is substituting.
We welcome Mr. Mitchell. We're sorry Mr. Harwood has had some illness in the family, and we hope sorts itself out. Declaration of members' personal prejudicial interests. Yes, Councillor.
I'm the governor of Sunside School, which is the subject of my report, so
Which school?
Sunside.
Is that for which item, Councillor? For which agenda?
Non-prejudicial.
It's the last item on the agenda.
It's
It's the last item on the agenda. It's non-prejudice. The highlight for many public questions. Are there any questions? Yeah, 15. Yes. Before I call you to ask the questions, can I just remind people, and explain for those that have not done it before, is that this Parliament meeting is limited by the Constitution to 30 minutes to a maximum of 20 questions, and there are 15, so it's 30 minutes. I've asked that the questions be put in so that first someone asks one question, then someone else asks a question, and so on. And if we have an opportunity, we'll get to the second question. Depends how quickly we are. And in order to give as much time as possible to the supplementary questions, I've asked the business governance to produce typed answers. So I won't read those answers if that's all right with you. Please read them. You can comment on them if you wish. But that means that you've got more time for your supplementary question, which you wouldn't have otherwise. The only point I hope you will forgive me if I just before I ask you the questions, perhaps you would allow me just to make one point. I find that this question time to me as an opposition member of this council very, very difficult. I chair this committee meeting. I hope I chair it fairly and without prejudice. But my political views on something like One Barnet are pretty clear, as I stated in the council meeting only on Tuesday. That has nothing to do with this committee. And my remit of this committee and my position as auditor is ensuring that the risk management of this council is correct and in order. And that's what our job is. And the responses given to these questions are the responses I have sought from the officers of the council and from the external auditors. And I'm relaying these to you as chairman. When you ask your supplementaries, I have no guidance and I will have to use my own wit to answer that, together with any help I may be able to receive. But I just wanted to point out that this is a very unusual committee in that sense, and I think hopefully people understand how it works. I now have a pleasure for 30 minutes now starts. Mr. Adam Langworth. Press the button, I'm sure you know this.
Thank you very much.
You see the response. Would you like to ask a supplementary question?
I would, thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I know that no internal audit reports on individual One Barnet projects have been presented to the previous audit committee meetings. Can the audit committee confirm if they have seen any internal audit reports on the One Barnet programme, and in particular the two big projects, the DRS and NSCSO? If not, will the audit committee insist on the reports being brought to a future audit committee for approval before a decision to award the contract is made?
The answer to that is that these reports will come to this committee because this committee looks at reports from everywhere. But it is outside the power of this committee, whether we want to or not, to stop the administration of this council carry on the, in this case, the One Barnet project or any of its others. The audit committee cannot stop the administration, whether it wanted to or not. But the reports will come to this committee, and the summary versions have been to the committee, but it is an ongoing thing, and it will come to the committee. And I think there are people on this committee, myself included, that will be looking at these things with great care. I'm not a pessimist. I like to think that even things I don't agree with might work out, but we will look at it as an audit committee should. I hope my committee agree with that. Thank you very much. And Ms. Barnet Jacobs. I must say I'm welcoming new faces to the questioning. It's a great pleasure. Do sit down, press the red button, and you see the answer on the paper. If you would like to ask a supplementary.
Yes, and I apologize if you feel that it is too similar to what has gone before. But because the answer is one that is, if I may say, slightly dismissive of the public, I would ask, will the audit committee seek sight of all audit documentation done on the two Barnet projects just mentioned, the DRS and the NSCSO, and ensure that they're not only brought back to the committee, but rigorously examined to confirm compliance with the required standard of delivery before any decision to award the contracts has been made, which is slightly different from stopping them.
I'm afraid I must answer that as much as I regret it, I would love to be running this council, but I'm not allowed to. So all I can say is that we can't stop contracts. It's not it's outside the power of the audit committee, unless we think something very wrong has happened, in which case we will make a report of that wrongdoing if there is one. And the administration will have to take cognizance of that, and they do. I mean, in the past on procurement, when this committee has made very strong actions to improve procurement, and we've given the senior officers a hard time, and they've responded, and it's improved a great deal, which you can see on the last item on the agenda. So the answer is that we as a committee cannot stop the project you're talking about, but we will, on an ongoing basis, examine it in as great a detail as this committee always does. And I have members of this committee who if I didn't want to, would keep me up to start, wouldn't they, Jeff? Thank you very much. Next one is Mr. John Dix.
He's actually got a family member who's seriously unwell, so he's not able to come.
Well, I'm sure he will see the answers, and that gets us on to Mr. Leonardo Alvarado.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Alvarado. Press the little red button there, and it's all yours. You see the answer about risk management strategy. Do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I don't see any red button here.
Yes,
Okay.
that's fine.
Thank you. Thank you. Procedurally, I think the response provided to my question, which is about managing the risks inherent in this fairly huge program, procedurally I think is correct, but I don't think the response addresses the essence of the question, which is, given that the people that are going to be at the receiving end of any risks that may materialize on this program are people in the community, residents, workers, business community, that there should be, from a stakeholder management point of view, activities scheduled to jointly and regularly review what are the risks, and that will give the sponsors of this program the opportunity to tap into that distributed wisdom and maybe identify and address risks that might not have been identified while there is still time. The question and the essence behind the question is not ideological and doesn't aim to be confrontational, and I think a collaborative approach may mitigate risks that otherwise may not be even known to the council.
Thank you very much. The essence of your question is, would the council allow stakeholders a say in the decisions making of this council? And you made the point, and I pass that message back through the senior officers and members, other councillors, that there is a desire for people to be involved. I'm sad that the residents' forums don't allow discussion on this, because it would be a place where people could make their point, but that's been excluded. I have no power to answer your question in the affirmative, other than to say that there has been a request which we pass on through the senior officer, the Section 15 officer, that there is a desire for stakeholders to have a say in the One Barnet project. When the ultimate is that there's people being elected to this council, there is a majority party running the council, and that majority at the end of the day will make those decisions. That's how local government works. There are changes in the pipeline with regard to how local councils work, such as restoring the committee system, which might allow more people to have a say in things. But we haven't moved to that yet. Councils like Sutton have moved to that, but I know it's something which is coming to a future meeting of the council, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, but the essence of my question is not only participation in the decision making, which I accept that happens through the people that we elect. No, it is active and direct participation in reviewing regularly and jointly the risks that have been identified, not in the decisions.
Yes, we don't have sort of discussion, but I will add to what I said by saying that it is the job of the councillors and independent members to review these matters. It is not the councils are not run by the electors. That stopped in ancient Greece, where they did do that. Sorry, that's the end.
Thank you.
The next one is Ms. Tozil Wasley. I must say, I'm so pleased to see new faces coming. Really is a pleasure.
We're pleased as well, and I think it reflects the sentiment in the streets of Barnet, where we meet a lot of people with severe reservations about the One Barnet program.
Could you ask something?
Yes. My question is, in light of the fact that the council is about to sign 2 major contracts in excess of £1 billion at the end of this year, what assurances will the committee seek to ensure effective citizen participation, and how will you be seeking this assurance before the decision award the contract is made?
The answer is that it's outside the power of this committee. There is no assurances that I or this committee can seek. If someone has any other answer to that, please tell me. I'm happy to take advice from anyone on it, but as far as I'm aware, these contracts will be the decision of the administration, rightly or wrongly, and the role of the audit committee will be to make sure that the processes are operated properly, and that no corners are cut as far as we're aware, but we tend to look at things historically after the event rather than before the event, because I know we are audit risk management, but audit tends to look at things that have happened and how they need to be improved, rather than trying to set it up in a proper manner at the beginning. Sorry, next question. Next question, please.
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, you asked for comments possibly from members of the committee. There are
Sorry, I'm going to stop you now, because I'm going to let them have as much time as possible, but if you want to come back during the main meeting, please do so.
So I can just may point out that the question referred to participation of citizens, so the process that you are auditing is what I was asking about. How will you ensure that this is happening? I know you're working historically.
I'm sorry, I'll answer that second question. That it is not the role of the audit committee to achieve participation from everybody. I think it will be a wonderful idea, and I personally believe that the way the area forums have their questions limited, the scope of questions limited, is a very minus quantity. I've said that publicly, but was the decision of this administration. Thank you. Rabbi Jeffrey. We welcome you to this place. The thing is already on, so you can see the answer to your very short answer to your question. Would you like to ask a supplementary?
Please. The answer which is given draws attention to page 98 of the report, and in particular, reading it out, it says that devolving decision-making to local people with the Localism Act requires devolving governments closer to local neighbourhoods and being cost-effective in the process. Work is currently progressing to determine methods to grant communities more power to enable them to influence their local areas. I would like to understand, please, Mr. Chairman, what that means and what I can expect to see at this time next year.
I must say, that's an incredibly good supplementary question, particularly as I spoke a number of times on the localism bill in the House of Lords, and so it is something I feel very strongly about, and very strongly about devolving decision making to local people, which is the policy of the coalition government. And I'm told that the work is progressing by the administration in order to do this, and I will take from your question that I will ask the officers at the next or subsequent meeting to report back to this committee on how they seek to do that. The next. This week. So with all these papers, I'm turning the page. So this week, can you sit down there, welcome again. The machine is on, so just if you can see the written response, could you ask a supplementary if you wish to?
Yes, please. Specifically, in response to responsible grant forms and a supplementary answer, we would point out that at the time of writing the report, so I'm asking about now, things have changed since I asked this question. What does the Audit Committee propose doing to ensure that prompt action is taken to address these unacceptable weaknesses before the decision is made to award any bargaining contract, one bargaining contract, I beg your pardon. It's not ours, it's one bargaining. Has that got any further?
The thing about external auditors are they are external and that they are independent and report without fear or favour. And we have to rely on Grant Thornton in this council, or the Audit Commission, a small number of now audits, and a few other 5 firms, I think, who do these audits. They don't only do Barnet Council, they do audits of other councils. This council takes a very, very strong view as to what they are saying. And when we come to discuss the accounts later in this meeting, we will, and the government statements, we will be drawing out as a committee, hopefully, views from Grant Thornton as to how it's progressing. And I invite any members of this committee to take up the points that you're making later on in the meeting when we're dealing with those items. So there isn't an easy answer other than to say that we are reliant on the auditors, external auditors we propose, and it would be completely out of order for us to try and seek to influence those internal auditors. They give their opinion. Their stuff in these papers here, I look at the papers I read them all before they get to this committee. And the one thing I've got... What? And well, maybe I feel I've got to, yes. But the one thing I can't alter is the external auditors' views, because that's their views, not mine. Thank you. Next question.
Will their views be published?
But they are published. They may not be published in as great a detail as you might require, but their views are published as part of their report. It may be more glowing than you think it ought to be, but they will be published. So next question, I'm sorry, that's it. A familiar face. Well, not at all. I won't make any disparagement of our answer. I'm sorry, take that the right way, will you, please?
Right, anyway, yes. Actually, can I just quickly ask, is it possible to have the written answers that we have here sort of emailed to us sort of before the meeting? It's awfully difficult for people to arrive here, read the answers and formulate the intelligent response on the foot, which may be part of your cunning
No,
plan.
well, it's my cunning plan, yes. My daughter once worked for a member of parliament. She used to give me speeches 20 minutes before he made them, then he couldn't alter them. So I know exactly what you mean. The problem in this one was, I was certainly asked whether in the future it is possible. There is some difficulty. The difficulty here was that many of the questions asked questions about the external auditors, and we had to wait until we got those answers before we could include them. And in fact, only today was I saying I haven't seen the responses, the draft responses. But I've seen all the questions, I've thought about the responses, but I have not seen the official responses. And I do think we must make an effort to try and get them earlier, and perhaps
Perhaps we could talk about later.
I think probably what I will ask the officers to do if they can is to make the answers to the questions available 30 minutes before the meeting, available so that you can pick them and look at them then. Will that be all right?
They always get available 30 minutes before.
So 30 minutes before the meeting, they will be available. As best I can do. That's not really your question, is it? Go on.
My question was, I actually asked the chairman. I asked him if you thought it was acceptable, appropriate that.
What was acceptable?
Question 8.
Yes.
Redaction of the documents when Mr. Dishman and I came to see them. They were so heavily redacted as to be made completely incomprehensible. And only today, actually, after a month of writing to Mr. Travers, by some strange coincidence, today I received a reply from him, which I haven't really had time to read properly, but which makes various claims about contracts being redacted after communications with a particular company, but I don't think that's a satisfactory answer. That shouldn't have to wait a month to have it either. The other point is in relation to Grant Thornton. It's rather short and terse reply is that you have concluded our correspondence with me and Mr. Dix, and I have nothing further to add at this time. Actually, when I wrote to him, I'm going to have to allude to my second question here in case there's no time. I wrote to him about the specific point in relation to conflict of interest, which is actually an urgent point.
Could you just make it into a question?
This is my question. I just like to ask Mr. Hughes why he hasn't replied.
Chairman.
You could ask.
Through you, would you mind asking Mr. Hughes why he hasn't tried to be president?
It's not something I can answer quickly, but I will ask, as he's already heard, Mr. Hughes, to reply to you, and even if it's he has nothing else to add, he will reply. I have no power of forcing from board, but they're independent, but I'm asking them to reply. I'm asking them to reply to you.
Okay, thank you.
Number 9 is Barbara Jacobs. Barbara Jacobson. We're up again.
So you get familiar with my face.
No. I'm desperately trying to get through as many 15 questions as possible. Right, a supplementary to your question number 9.
Right. The auditor's report states that Council's total usable revenue reserves remain higher than the London Borough average of the Council. To explain how it is able to provide value for money by increasing the level of the reserves instead of using that extra money used to increase them, to maintain rather than cut services, or is it using or planning to use those extra funds to pay for its uncontrolled overspend on consultants such as the Joyce?
I asked the same question, so I can actually answer that because it was something I asked. There has been an increase of 24.592 million in earmarked reserves, and the answer I got was that the council has increasing the level of earmarked reserves it is set aside to ensure the council is in a strong position to cope with financial risks outlined in the 2012-13 council budget report. It's important to emphasise that the earmarked reserves have been established for specific reasons, i.e. to support the One Barnet transformation project, cover the cost of potential corporate risk and other service-specific projects, and not for general utilisation. And I would add that is a very laudable thing, and if I was making a political statement, as I would in the council here, I would have said that you often get the suspicion that when people are putting in reserves, they're putting it for a treasure chest to do something for the future. And I've made this speech many a time about money should be raised in 1 year for spending in that year. And I've made that many times in this council. However, as an audit committee, this is very prudent to have increase in reserves, and shows that the current council administration is being prudent. And as an audit committee, we're in favour of prudence. So I'm afraid it's not something for us to not critical, something for us to criticise. Although as politicians, some might criticise it. So I'm afraid that's the answer.
It seems to be prudence over practicality then, something for the future rather than whatever exists now.
I would just add that the council, all councils, discuss with their external auditors what is regarded as a proper level of reserves appropriate to the turnover of the council. And this council has one of the largest turnovers in London, and therefore reserves are often thought by external auditors to be a percentage of those revenues. Am I getting it wrong?
I'll provide some clarification. We provide some clarification on this when we present our report.
Wonderful, thank you very much. So when they present their report, they will add properly to what I've said, amateurishly. We've got. It's not here. Question revenue. Mr. Alvarado, question revenue. Right, number 11, Mr. Alvarado.
Yeah, it is not the response, the key word there is flexibility, and to avoid ending up over a very expensive barrel or the cost of changes. So my quick supplementary would be this: a very big program. It has all the signs that it's going to be implemented over a big bang, 1st of April, 1st of May. A change that perhaps a better wisdom would be to be done over a couple of years. I understand staff is being restructured. What's the logic for going to make these big changes over a short period of time?
It's not really an audit point, but I don't think it's over such a short period of time. It's starting, but it's an ongoing process. It's not all happening Big Bang. I'm sorry, it's not. The project is one big project, but it's not happening immediately on the 1st of April. It's happening over a period of time. So it's not a Big Bang project.
Thank you.
Are we still going on? You know, she let me go on. She said she still haven't given you enough time. So, how about that? Question 12 was Terza was apparently we started because I yattered a bit. We started a bit late. Right. Question 12. Your second question.
Yeah, my supplementary will be in light of my concerns highlighted in my question. Can the audit committee seek an assurance that the best practice is put in place effectively before the decision to award the contracts is made, and not after, as I believe Mr. Cornelius implied in an answer about the public sector comparator in the full council meeting a couple of days ago, when he said you'll have the comparison after the contracts will be implemented. Whereas by then we all know it will be far too late because we will be obliged for 10 or 15 years contracts. So can you seek an assurance that best practices are put in place before the contracts are awarded?
Well, the contracts are going to be effective in 2013 in the action plan. So it's not, as I said in the answer to the previous person, people are expecting it all to happen as a big bang. If I understand it, that is not correct. Is that correct? Is that right? It's going to have it's going to be an ongoing process. Is that right? Can you just answer that?
Thank you. The One Barnet programme in its totality, as you say, is an ongoing programme that's been going on for some time and will continue. Quite right to say that there are two major procurements coming to contract award around about the same time. The arrangements in respect of scrutiny are what they are, and they will apply to this process as with any other.
Sorry, can you repeat that sentence?
The arrangements in respect of scrutiny are set out in the Council's constitution, and they will apply in the same way to this process as they do to any other process.
So before, we can hope that the audit will be able, the audit committee will be able to scrutinize them before.
Sorry, you're only allowed one question.
Okay.
If I just add, a lot of that's done by the scrutiny committee, not by the audit committee. And if you want to address a question to that committee, I'm sure they welcome it. Thank you very much. That's the end of questions. And we've got one more question, which is number 13.
Yes, I was asking about conflict of interest, and the answer was that useful steps have been taken to ensure conflicts of interest no longer arise. If that's the case, why is it that it's generally to be the case that a consultant working for Barnet Council has now left only recently and taken up a position with a company that was awarded a contract? How could that situation arise if you have, as you claim, put into practice processes to prevent conflicts of interest or the perception of conflicts of interest? I think it's a very serious matter. I've raised this with Mr. Hughes. He hasn't replied.
I'm going to ask if Mr. Hughes will include that when he reports later on.
Until I have chair.
You will do it. Please do it. I'm told we have now had a 30 minutes. Yes, Councillor Rayner, I'm sorry to stop you.
Yeah, that's all right. One of the questioners raised the point of wanting to see the answers to the questions earlier than and you suggested half an hour beforehand. It is exactly the same for the committee members. We haven't even seen the questions or the answers that are printed on this document before we come to the committee meeting. Is there any possibility of presenting those to the committee members so that we can read them and assimilate them and understand what's going on as far as the public questions is concerned?
I have no problem asking Ms. Agala to send you all copies of the questions at least one day before the meeting. Yeah. So the questions you will get when I get the questions.
Yes.
I've got no problems with that, and the answers will be put in your group rooms before the meeting.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just briefly, for members of the public, you see all the written answers you get here or downstairs?
They will come up here. They will come up here. Up to. They will be here in the committee room. The pre-meeting I have with the officers is always held in another room, so they will be in this room. Okay. I'm told that they were always in the room 30 minutes before. The trouble is we haven't actually told anybody, so now it is here, and it will be here. Run up here, get the questions, and read them, and members of the committee will see the questions when I see the questions.